The code has been cracked, but what does that mean for Suzuka? Let's find out. What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Backup Fantasy Sports. It is Wednesday, April 3rd. My name is Ewan, and on today's episode, we're going to get into some F1 fantasy with a Japanese Grand Prix preview. So much to break down, so little time, a little later than my usual race previews. So apologies for that, but I will be getting this out here and there will be a deadline live stream. Yes, one more third time in 4 races this season that I'll be waking up to get everyone ready, including myself, for qualifying in Suzuka. This time it's going to be a little bit earlier than usual. So join me at whatever time in the world that you are awake or watching F1, and I will be here talking deadline stream for F1 fantasy. So definitely come on by at it's going to be like 7 o'clock my time. So, yes, I will be here with some coffee. You should have your beverage of choice, and we will talk some F1 fantasy. But where do we start without the price changes? The code was cracked literally last week in this YouTube channel. I was like, cracking the code question mark, like kind of noticing some price change or like some price brackets and like where these drivers were ending up with their points and stuff like that. I wasn't really that close. And then like 2-3 days later, the F1 Fantasy Tools Discord cracked it. Incredible work by them. Max Alive was the original person that put this all together. And then Andy Tails and F1 Fantasy ran kind of like all the data against everything. And yeah, it totally matches up. So now we know how price changes works. And I'm not going to get into that too much here because there's only a couple of days before qualifying. So I want to focus on that. But I will do a basic description of how it goes. And I'm going to actually post a bunch of useful content for you to consume after you watch this video and you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel in the description below. So Rain Fantasy, F1 Fantasy Hub, F1 Fantasy HQ, they have all done 3 separate contents that are really useful to fully understand how these price changes work. I will probably be talking about it a lot more on the deadline live stream. So tune in there if you have any more questions after watching this video, F1 Fantasy Hub's video, Rain Fantasy's video, and reading the F1 Fantasy HQ article. It is fantastic. Like, it has been a fun weekend in F1 Fantasy. I've just unfortunately had some social commitments where I've had to not be near the camera to talk about it because I wanted to so badly. I was on X. So if you follow me at UNFPL, you probably saw me tweeting about it a bunch. But let's just do a very basic rundown just so if this is the only F1 fantasy kind of content you are consuming this week, I will put you in a good place. So pretty much they found out, Max Alive found out that drivers and constructors have been placed into 3 tiers. Tier A is 25 million, tier B is 15 to 24.9 million, and tier C is 0 to 14.9 million. And all of this, the work they did is pretty much 99% accurate, except for one Logan Sargent race. It always comes back to Logan Sargent, where he just didn't really match up all that well. He went below, I think he went down to like 3.5 million, and they just couldn't really calculate that. That was the only exception, I believe, from the last 2 seasons when they started this price jump kind of data. So the price jumps are based on points scored by that driver/constructor divided by the total points scored by all drivers/constructors at that race. Comes out with like a little number. If you scored above here, above there, below there, you go up in price, you go down in price. So yes, it is so exciting to finally figure this out. But yeah, great resources in the description below. So check all that out. People go in way more in depth than we are going to here. The only thing I wanted to kind of touch on was who is in each tier. So tier A, drivers and constructors, Verstappen and Red Bull Racing. Tier B is Norris, Perez, Leclerc, Sainz, Piastri, Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Fernando Alonso. And on the constructor side, it's McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes for tier B. And then Tier C, it's Stroll, Ricardo, Ocon, Tsunoda, Magnussen, Gasly, Albon, Hulkenberg, Joe Guan Yu, Valtteri Bottas, Logan Sargent, and then Aston Martin, Visa Cash App RB, Alpine, Haas, Williams, and Sauber. And the tiers kind of have a price jump max. So like tier A can only go up 0.2, 0.3, but tier C is where we're going to be making our budget. So definitely tune into the Deadline live stream. Check out the resources below where they explain it in full. But pretty much, if you want to grow your budget, we're going to have to hop on some of these C tier assets and watch our cost cap rise throughout the weekend. Very exciting stuff, but I had to touch on it. I think I'm one of the last F1 fantasy content creators to put a video out there. I wasn't able to put out a full video, but I did want to touch on it a tiny bit. But we are here for a Japanese Grand Prix preview. So kind of going to go over the usual stuff here. Suzuka International Racing Course, 5.807 kilometers, 53 laps, 18 corners, 1 DRS zone, first Grand Prix in 1987. All the session times are here. So local time in Japan, UK time, USA Eastern. So qualifying is 7 a.m. UK time. That's when I will be here. Germany time, 7 a.m. for the Deadline live stream. So 1 hour before the qualifying. So 2 p.m. in Suzuka, 6 a.m. UK, 1 a.m. USA Eastern. I will be here on the YouTube channel on Backup Fantasy Sports talking F1 fantasy. So if you want to come join me, beer, coffee, Coke, afternoon pick me up, whatever you want, I will be here answering all your questions, all your fears and hopes and dreams for your F1 fantasy lineup. And I will be going through the same thing. Yes. So let's do that together. But as you can see here, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, regular Grand Prix. Yes. Lots of fun for us F1 fantasy managers. Suzuka is going to come up here with the 3 hardest compounds, C1, C2, C3, which is the same as Bahrain, where Red Bull dominated. So that might be something we need to keep in mind heading into this weekend. But yeah, compared to Australia, it is as on the other end of the scale as it can possibly be. 2023 Japan Grand Prix here was a great weekend for McLaren as they went 2-3 in qualifying, 2-3 in the race. It was a disaster of a weekend for Sergio Perez. If you remember, he took out Kevin Magnussen and then DNF'd. It was all over the place, but really simple weekend for Max Verstappen, but he's coming off a DNF, ended a 2-year streak of finishing every race. So that's something that we also need to think about. But yeah, great weekend for McLaren, which is something that we need to keep in mind ahead of the 4th race of the F1 Fantasy 2024 season. Max versus the meta. This is where we're getting into kind of everyone. There's a lot of people that can now afford Max plus Red Bull and Ferrari, and that's going to be the best points scoring lineup, I would feel, but it might not be the best budget growing lineup. So if you do not have the money to kind of get off of the back markers, or if you can't even get up to Max Red Bull Ferrari, don't worry. That means you'll probably be in a tier below in tier B, and you'll be able to grow your budget a lot faster. But here is kind of the breakdown of the season so far. Price, points, average points per dollar, and predicted price increase according to F1 Fantasy Tools, which is based on just their pre-Japan weekend kind of simulation. They don't have any practice data to go off of yet, so they haven't really updated their models yet. But as you can see here, Verstappen 29.7, Perez 22.4, Leclerc 21.4, Carlos Sainz 19.8. Points, 71 Verstappen, 84 Perez, 97 Leclerc, 82 for Carlos Sainz. Average points per dollar, Verstappen 0.79, Perez 1.25, Leclerc 1.51, and Leclerc 2.0, or Sainz 2.07, Leclerc 1.51. Sainz's will be different than what you see on F1 Fantasy Tools and the F1 game, because I just divided by 2 since he was actually only in those 2 races. So it feels unfair to kind of, not even ding him for Ollie Behrman's race. It just, that's what Carlos has done in 2 races this season. And then the predicted price increase, they predict Sergio Perez to rise the most, 0.35, and then Carlos Sainz, 0.31, Charles Leclerc, 0.27, and Max Verstappen, 0.08. So that is the trade-off you'll be making if you go with Max Verstappen. He is unlikely to rise all that much. He dropped zero point 0.7 after his DNF in Australia, which is massive. And he can only go up 0.2 according to this new price change model. So that those gains are not going to go like come back in one race, which gives us a lot of hope as F1 fantasy managers, because I think I'm only like 0.2, 0.3 short of even getting to max. So if I go with Leclerc or Sainz or Perez and they have a half decent race where they get to the 1 million kind of marker to jump up in price there, I'll be able to afford max by China. And that's going to be very important. I think I'm going to go into it more in the live stream. I'm going to build like kind of something to go off of, but uh, I really think we're going to want max for that sprint in China, because 2 races plus qualifying. That's 3 chances for max to max out the points. Apologies for the pun there, but yeah, I think it's going to be super important to get Max Verstappen in your lineup. And there's also a thought uh, of using the limitless chip to get there, but I will talk about that a little bit more in the team selection. Constructor Conundrum here. I've eliminated Mercedes. No one's going near the Mercedes, right? Like, that's not happening. I'm sorry. The silver arrows are pointing down right now in 2024. And Lewis Hamilton's going to be looking at that Ferrari car being like, I can win some races in that in 2025. So definitely something to think about. Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari, and Aston Martin are on this graphic here. If you are listening to the podcast, price points, average points per dollar, and predicted price increase. The main storyline here is that this could be Aston Martin's last race in the C tier bracket where they can jump up a huge amount. So there is some thinking that if you really need to gain budget, if you really want to gain budget, it could be worth going with Aston Martin this weekend. It is something I've thought about. I actually posted a tweet about it earlier this week. I'll build that in the team selection in just a couple of minutes. But I'm not entirely sure if I want to go there. Ferrari, McLaren, also good options. But right now, Red Bull and Ferrari is the meta. If you're not on that, I would try as hard as you can to get on those constructors, because they are just scoring so many points. As you can see here, Ferrari 223, Red Bull 211, McLaren's at 131, and Aston Martin is at 64. So yeah, those are the top 4 scoring constructors. Average points per race: Ferrari 3.56, Red Bull 2.49, McLaren 1.83, and Aston Martin 1.47. Those are 4 of the top 5 highest marks in average points per race, or value as they call it on F1fantasy.com. Haas is third, 2.22. So you never know. The American outfit could be some good budget team for one more week. I'm just a little hesitant to go there for obvious reasons. Predicted price increase for Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari, and Aston Martin goes 0.09 for the Bulls, 0.22 for the Papaya, 0.24 for the Tifosi, and 0.53 for the James Bonds. Is that a nickname that we can go with there? Anyways, but yeah, Aston Martin 0.53 increase could be huge. One more slide here before I get into the team selection portion of the video is just your price brackets, your general budget optimal team according to F1 Fantasy Tools. So if you have a $106 million cost cap, here is the team you should want ahead of any sims coming out. That'd be Red Bull, Ferrari, Verstappen, Tsunoda, Albon, Bottas, and Sargent. That would get you a cool 217.4 points. 105 million, you got to drop down a little bit here. Red Bull, Ferrari, Perez, Stroll, Tsunoda, Albon, Bottas. 215 points. If you got 104 million in the bank, this covers 104 and 103.0 million. Red Bull, Ferrari, Perez, Tsunoda, Ricardo, Albon, Zhou Guanyu, 213.9 points. And if you got 102 million, Perez, Tsunoda, Albon, Zhou Guanyu, Gasly, Red Bull, and Ferrari as your constructors. So as you can see here, Red Bull and Ferrari, very popular in the constructors. They clean sweep most of the optimal teams. I didn't go any lower than 102, because if you're doing 100, you're pretty much just going to do whatever you need to do to get Red Bull, Ferrari, and Perez, and that means you've just started playing this week. So yeah, but let me know if you are doing that in the comments below, and let me know what your budget currently is and what your team ahead of FP1 is for the Japanese Grand Prix. So here is the squad ahead of the Japanese Grand Prix preview. As you can see, the backup for the fantasy sports team, top 62K in the world now, had a huge jump in Australia thanks to the max DNF, jumping on the meta. I actually used my no negative chip. If you tuned in for the live stream, you would have known that, or you follow me on X at UNFPL, you would have seen that I decided to use my no negative chip, save me 20 points. Maybe there'll be bigger savings. I mean, it could be this weekend. It looks like it might be a little bit wet in Suzuka, but we'll get more into that on the live stream. So definitely tune in there, which I'll be tweeting about a link to on X, and just set a notification if you like and subscribe to the channel. You will get notified there. But anyways, less than 2.5 days until qualifying locks. So kind of let's look at some teams here. I got Charles, Lance Stroll, Pierre Gasly, Valtteri Bottas, Alexander Albon, Red Bull, and Ferrari. So kind of a basic team. I've got 0.8 in the bank. So unfortunately, that means that I really can't do anything in the driver market to get rid of Kick Sauber, whose pit stops are just atrocious. I cannot get over how bad these pit stops are, and they are just costing their drivers points. If this turns into a 2-stop race, which I guess we'll see, given that they're using the 3 hardest compounds, like 2-stop race is a death sentence for Kick Sauber. Like, it is over. They can't afford to like get back through the field with their 7 to 54-second pit stops. Like, we don't even know what we're going to get. We're going to need some more confirmation that they have fixed this problem. I think I saw that they haven't, but with kind of the press day starting tomorrow, hopefully we'll get some concrete news on their pit stop performance, and maybe we could trust them more. But anyways, like, as you can see here, all I can do is either pick Valtteri Bottas or Logan Sargent. I am 0.1 short of going to Zhou Guanyu, who could at least get me some overtakes. Valtteri Bottas hasn't even been performing that well this season, at least in F1 Fantasy. As you can see here, I'm pretty sure he's got 1 point on the year. Yes, 0, -1, and 2 points in Australia. So yeah, being part of that team is bad, but I can't get off him if I want to save a transfer and roll it to China. So right now, I have 2 trains of thought. I really want to save one of my transfers so that I can roll into China with 3 transfers, divvy up the squad, get Max in, that kind of deal, and make some big changes if I need to, and maximize the most out of China. However, if Red Bull and Ferrari are just as dominant as could possibly be, there is part of me that wants to kind of use the limitless chip in China, where I just go Max, Sergio, Charles, Carlos, and Lando with Red Bull and Ferrari, and just kind of, if those are the 3 top teams right now at the beginning of the year, and we know that for certain, we know they're not going to lose out to Aston. We know that Mercedes is nowhere close right now. It might be a good time. I know you're supposed to use your chips later in the season when it's more powerful, but if there's like a like set in stone top 3 teams, why would we not use that to our advantage? Like, there's not like an extra sprint race later in the season. There could be like engine penalties. I understand that, but there really weren't that many last season. And they've like added some allocations for some stuff this year. So I wonder if that is maybe a thing of the past in F1. So yeah, like, if you can't take them with you, so it could be worth the early season gamble to go with limitless. But that's kind of my 2 trains of thought right now that I'm leaning towards. However, if you follow me on X at UNFPL, you would have seen that earlier this week I did tweet out this kind of interesting, different strategy where I was thinking, like, maybe I need to gain budget. Like, Aston Martin is about to jump from the C to the B tier here. So this is our last chance to kind of get some money out of Aston Martin, because once they jump up into the B tier with McLaren, Ferrari, and Mercedes, like, they're not going to score enough points to even go up 0.2 every week. So there's no point of getting them. So something I am also thinking about, very small part, but it would be getting rid of Red Bull. Gasp. I know. But getting rid of Valtteri Bottas, so that's a good thing. Getting rid of Kick Sauber. And then I would bring in Aston Martin just for budget purposes. And that would leave me with Carlos Sainz. So I'd be rolling with triple Ferrari. So if they just kind of do what they need to do, that's a million. That's a million. That's a million. Lance Stroll, that's a million. Aston Martin, that's a million. Like we could be looking at huge budget increase because right now I am rocking about like 103.8 million. So it's not that great, but getting these 5 assets in my team could boost me up 105 million in one race. And that could do huge things for your F1 fantasy team heading in to China. However, that would only leave me with 2 transfers for China, which could get interesting. But you don't really have to worry with the new price changes. You don't have to worry about Max and Red Bull getting away from you because with them being in the tier A, they are not climbing as fast as the rest of our assets. So you can kind of take a gamble. It's a bit of a stretch, and I really do prefer kind of having the 3 transfers or leaving the limitless. Those would be my first 2 options, but this is kind of the third option that I'm thinking about. Let me know in the comments below which uh, strategy you think is better. The kinda just the 1 transfer option, roll a transfer into China, the then use limitless in China, or this kind of use 2 transfers, gain a bunch of budget. I'm really, really interested to see what the rest of the community thinks. So hit me up on X, comment below, let me know what you are thinking ahead of the Japanese Grand Prix. However, the one strategy I haven't actually talked about what I would do if I would just use the 1 transfer. So let's go back here. Valtteri Bottas. Red Bull Racing, if I was just to use my 1 transfer and roll the other one to China, I could get rid of Pierre Gasly and get myself some Yuki Tsunoda, which is not bad. He's looked really good. He is like wiping the floor with Daniel Ricciardo this season. So, and he's starting to rise in budget. 0.5 could be on for a point or 1 million increase as well. So then I would still have 1, 2, 3, potentially 4 assets that could rise a million. I'd have to suck it up with Valtteri Bottas. We'll see what Williams looks like. Are they even going to have 2 cars this week? I mean, they're on track, but 1 shunt in practice, and it could be game over again for that team. So this is kind of where I would be with my 1 transfer option. The other option is limitless in China to set myself up. And yeah, that would be kind of where I'm at heading into the Japanese Grand Prix. Just a reminder, one last time on the previous show for the lineup block on Saturday, April 6th, local time 3 p.m., UK time 7 a.m., USA Eastern is going to be 2 p.m. So make sure you set those alarms and you do not miss that qualifying. And once again, deadline live stream. Come join me. Beverage of choice. I'm serious. Like I might have a Gatorade, a coffee, a water, big beverage guy all over the place. So I will have all my bases covered. Join me with a beer on the West Coast, some extra strong coffee if you're in the UK, or a early like sundowner if you're in Asia watching the Japanese Grand Prix. Apologies about kind of getting this out late this week. Just yeah, social commitments. You know how it is. Fantastic calendar that just came in the mail for me from Formula Fanatics. Got every race of the year on there. I'm not affiliated with them at all. But yeah, go check it out. It's like really cool. Like you just get all the races, all the info. Look, there's April, here's June. Like would highly recommend it if you're an F1 fan. So just something I wanted to shout out there as well. But don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is really helping me out. I really appreciate all the support. I feel like it's going out to more and more people, and the community is growing in the little YouTube channel here. And it's really like fostering good comments and good thoughts. I'm like really learning a lot just responding to y'all's excellent comments each and every episode. But good luck with any prep you've got going before the Japanese Grand Prix. We got FP1, FP2, practice debrief coming out. So it's going to be a busy Friday. Follow me on X at UNFPL. I will be tweeting all of that out and discussing whatever you want in F1 fantasy circles. But once again, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I will talk to you next time.